Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Let's start while we wait for one of our colleagues, one panelist, and when he comes. So welcome to this sixth Capacity Building Hub. We have now the session on boosting capacity building of SMEs for engaging in climate action. So several keywords here. We're at the Capacity Building Hub, so we're going to speak about capacity building. We're going to speak how to build the capacities of small and medium-sized enterprises as key stakeholders for moving forward in climate action. So the panel, and we have the very distinguished panelists with us, the intention is to have a discussion on what are, on the one hand, what are the key capacity gaps and needs of small and medium-sized enterprises in developing countries, and what could be some ideas on how to address them. And we have a presentation on an initiative that's in the making, and we want to take this opportunity of this event to also hear from the audience, our panelists, their thoughts and insights of such an initiative, but that will come a bit later. So just as an introduction, my name is Alejandro Kilpatrick. I'm the manager of the Capacity Building Subdivision at the UNFCCC Secretariat. And this event is related to, again, the importance of capacity building for private sector engagement, but there's a bit of background. A couple of years ago, together with Climaticos, who's here with us, with Robert, we carried out several mapping studies in several regions to understand a bit better what are the capacity gaps and needs of small and medium-sized enterprises for engaging more effectively in climate action. So we did these regional studies for Middle East and Northern Africa, Southern and Eastern Africa, and for Southeast Asia. So from these mapping studies, so we looked at different information available. We also carried interviews with business associations in the different regions. And we also, together with this mapping, we did another mapping of what are the academic and research institutions that are working in different regions that have curricula focused on sustainability, and an attempt to see how this could be a source of expertise, knowledge, and experts to be involved in helping develop the capacities of small and medium-sized enterprises. So these studies were very well received, and there were several recommendations stemming out of them, and out of those, there's this Climate Action Booster initiative that's going to be presented by Robert as an idea to take forward the findings from these mapping studies. And Robert will elaborate a bit on the key findings, but they relate a lot about accessing finance, how SMEs can better access climate finance, how to integrate climate risk into their business models, and how to enhance technical skills. So we'll be discussing all of these aspects from that perspective, capacity building for SMEs. And we have a very good panel of experts in different areas, and I'm very pleased to introduce them. So in terms of the run of the show, then Robert will be delivering a presentation, and then we'll be having a panel discussion. But please let me first introduce our distinguished panelists. So we have Simon Thompson from the Global Capacity Building Coalition, the Managing Director. We have Mr. Sheikh Keita from the World Union on Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises. We have Vikas Agarwal from ACA, which is the Association of Certified Chartered Accountants, if I got it right. Thank you, Vikas. And we have also Fernando Castellanos Silveira from the UN Global Compact. And of course, my colleague Robert Tipman from Climaticos, who will be delivering the presentation. We're waiting for another panelist, Mr. Ayman Sherkawi from the Mohammed VI Foundation. I'm hoping he will join us soon. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Robert for a quick presentation on to cover a bit of the mapping, the findings of the mapping, and how is that related to this idea of this SME Climate Action Booster, focusing on how to enhance the capacities of SMEs. So, Robert, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Alejandro. And yeah, my name is Robert Chipman, Climaticos. We are a non-profit company working in the climate field for many, many years. And related to why we're working on SMEs, for a few years we've been doing work on that. For example, a few years ago, we are based in Germany. BMZ approached us and asked us to develop an initiative. And basically what we did there, and it's something I will come back to later, is to how can SMEs in the global south respond to regulatory requirements? For example, sustainable development reporting, or more specifically, deforestation-free supply chains. As you know, it's introduced by the EU. So we did a bigger initiative on that, looked in many countries, Asia, Latin America, and Africa, and on cases and what does that mean, including how can you respond to that using, for example, market mechanisms, also carbon markets, which tell you it's possible, but not very straightforward, difficult, and help is needed. And then at some point, 2 years ago or so, the Secretariat, knowing also that we, one of the regions we know and have been doing work is the MENA region, we got asked whether we can do this mapping in the MENA region, looking at SMEs, their gaps and needs, and as Alejandro mentioned, we used surveys, direct interviews with stakeholders, SMEs and others, like the usual literature review, and also we started, which is interesting, to look at what are the networks in the countries. And in the MENA region, for example, you find quite a lot of, in the annex, per country, academia, research, associations, and others that could come in and be used when you start doing really something concrete on the ground. I think don't want to go too much more into the mappings or come back to them in a minute, but we also came in and helped out in the Southeast, on the mapping in the Southeast Asian region. There were 2 others which we were not involved, Eastern and Southern Africa and LAC, Latin America. I think with, and then after we have done that, Alejandro, me, and a couple of other people looked at it. So what are we doing with this? This is another set of studies. Well, we put it on the shelf, it collects dust, or are we going to do something with it? And then the idea was born, and others who looked at it, or we exchanged with that, it makes sense, can we bring this forward? And then this, what we now, maybe some marketing experts have better ideas, but what we call currently SME Climate Action Booster, SME CAP, the abbreviation, that's kind of in an early stage, and I will a bit basically have a few slides what we came up with stemming from the mappings. And this, maybe also to mention, people interested, this is a landing page that is just very simple, what is this thing about, very straightforward, simple, but that is online, I think it's somewhere also you mentioned, as well as with the mappings, there are links available where this can be looked at. So basically, what are we doing? And that maybe also shows already what is a bit trying, the unique thing, what we, obviously there are other initiatives out there, but we looked at it, something that is really looking at SMEs in the climate change process, and how NDC lets national adaptation process plans can be implemented, and how can the capacities be built here. And also the idea is to have something very concrete. Doesn't mean another online platform where you just look at some information, you download some reports. There's more that we are planning to do. Here, this is basically a summary of what from all the mappings came out based on the literature reviews and the surveys. It's simplified, and of course you have to say in each of the regions and countries it looks a little bit different, but overall, there are these elements, 5 of them, for example, sound information basis on impacts and risk, and that also translated something that SME managers understand, and what does it mean for them, and how this can be used in your business planning. Climate action measures, of course, many will know, for example, I know solar applications, solar irrigation, or if you look at the agriculture sector, but there are also many out there that wouldn't really know. Understanding of business relevant climate policy, also what we found out during the mappings, that a lot are not really sure or know what is the regulatory framework, the policy framework in their countries. Again, also break this down and that it's become made available on a very simple, straightforward way. Then also knowledge access financing. We had a similar event this morning. It came again, was apparent by, and I'm sure maybe we will hear from Sheikh later, who was there on the panel as well, and from Asia, India financing, access, how do I get access to finance? There's climate finance from different facilities and funds, and then there's also, if you talk to the banks, which, and technical capacities as well. So, then briefly, and you can see this is somehow developed based on this results-based mention of theory of change, as many of you, but the objective of this would be to really contribute to Paris Agreement and that greenhouse gases from the private sector decline. And maybe on that note, I think what also is really important, if we talk about greenhouse gas mitigation private sector, scope 3 emissions, that's also interest to the corporate, the big corporates, and that's where the small ones, the SMEs, coming in. So this is really something where help is needed. And as well, there's the flip side of the climate change coin, so to say, as we have seen in the recent years, that resilient supply chains are very important. Again, SMEs need to be supported here. Then we have strategic approach, guidelines on capacity building, collaborative capacity building programs, and access to reliable information, technical and financial knowledge, as I mentioned. And just briefly, that translates into a set of activities. We have 2 pillars. One is modules that will be made available. And again, it's not like online platform. Just you download something, and the second pillar will show how it works. So what is it about the environments, empowering, enabling environments for SME climate action? The other one, SME climate action, mitigation, adaptation, measures and practices. Analyzing, measuring, benefiting. For example, again, there's another project we are involved in where, again, how can you respond to the deforestation-free supply chain regulation? We are involved in a project with the German EKI where we set up a program and capacities for NGOs working with SMEs and farmers in East Africa. So something like this would be here, could be an example. Access to climate finance. And also, as I mentioned earlier, there's something on that carbon pricing instruments can be used. But of course, if you ask an SME, it's a question of critical mass, and on their own they would not be able to do that. Then the other pillar showing how do you bring that down on the ground, coalition and consortia building platforms, other engagement means, and supporting the, so that would be organized. Regional champion countries, usually you have some countries that are a bit more advanced and can showcase to others positive success stories. Now that would be promoted here, and also, of course, looking at working, for example, with the associations in the countries, looking at specific sectors and using them as multipliers. I think maybe I keep that a bit more brief to not too much time. Then the related outputs that would be made available and be used here, reviews and analysis of policies, initiatives, incentive mechanisms, strategic planning, risk management, what is the climate finance landscape, and again, make that usable, not if you look at these, what if climate policy initiative or whatever, these reports is not really of use to anybody for SMEs. So that would need to be translated in something that is usable in form of kind of tools. Support programs, initiatives, incentives on the national level, and yet, as Alejandro mentioned, there also, of course, education, the people in SMEs being hired, training, curricula, capacity building modules. Yeah, similar on the side of the partnership and consortia building, that what will be the activities, how that relates or translates into concrete partnerships, consortia, and capacity building initiatives. So I keep that brief. I think that's straightforward, no need to further. And before I come to the end, I would just like briefly to, people probably ask, okay, it's an initiative in an early stage, but we have first concepts, ideas, next steps planned, and what would be next steps that we look at before this, if it really flies, could be officially launched. Further partnership building is starting. Fundraising, obviously, we have something to work with next year to further develop that. For example, also to establish the initial key offerings and a bit more substance to it, a brand marketing strategy, and certainly a first IT-based platform presenting the initiative a bit more way beyond what this landing page is. Initial key offerings and related modules. Certainly all this is related to securing first funding for implementation. And Alejandro, I would leave it at that and hand back over to you for the next phase.
Thank you very much, Robert. And as you mentioned, what you just presented is a bit of trying to give a practical follow-up to these mapping studies in terms of how to address the key issues that emerge from those studies and how to better assist SMEs in developing countries in terms of enhancing their capacities. And again, the discussion here, the intention obviously will not be to reinvent the wheel, because I know our distinguished panelists will talk about what they're doing that's related to capacity building. So how this could be complemented, this effort could be complemented. Or maybe you can also reflect on what are the gaps that you think would need to be filled to further strengthen the capacities of SMEs to engage in climate action. So having said that, now we will proceed with our panel, and I will maybe start with Ayman, if you allow me. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for making it. So Ayman Sherkawi, he's from the Mohammed VI Foundation for Environmental Protection, and he's a very good friend of the PCCB and a big fan of capacity building, I have to say. So from your perspective, from the perspective of the foundation, what do you believe the philanthropic sector can do to support the capacity building needs of SMEs? What are you actually doing on this? And what are the biggest challenges and priorities for interventions by your foundation when supporting SMEs? Let's start there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First, I would like to confirm officially that I'm a big fan of the PCCB. I love capacity building, and I believe strongly in the potential of the PCCB network to scale up capacity building all over the world. Having said that, to address specifically your question, I believe that philanthropy has an important role to play in coordination and cooperation with the stakeholders at all levels. And to illustrate that, I want to share some of what we do that I think is of relevance. And to do that, I share some examples. So first, we do a lot of capacity building in Morocco and in Africa. Those are the two geographic areas that we focus. So in Morocco and more broadly, basically, in the continent. And we work with the private sector quite a bit, including SMEs. And SMEs are we found it challenging to onboard them, to make it relevant for them, and to sustain over a long period of time the engagement. Those are some of the challenges, and I'll go back later to that, as that was the second question you asked. So what we focus on typically is greenhouse gas accounting through carbon footprint calculation aligned with the national GHG carbon footprint tool that we developed in collaboration with the Ministry of Industry and Trade, Ministry of Energy Transition and Sustainable Development, the Ministry of Economy and Finance, the Moroccan Employers Association, the Moroccan Agency of Energy Efficiency, and as well the institution that is in charge of standards, for example, ISO. So we've launched that work back in 2013, our first iteration, and then we updated and upgraded that tool back in 2022. And we've been doing a lot of capacity building activities around that. And some of that work was at the national level. Some of that work was at the subnational level. So we went all over the 12 regions of the country to engage directly with enterprises and businesses that are active at a not national level, at a local level. And actually, as I'm speaking, tomorrow we'll do in Agadir a workshop just like that in collaboration with the European Investment Bank and the Moroccan Employers Organization. So we also do a lot of capacity building, climate finance. You referred to earlier climate finance, but we need to be mindful about that because particularly when it comes to SMEs, in terms of managing expectations, because they've been hearing about opportunities connected to climate finance for quite some time. They hear about billions, they hear about trillions. So typically the training would start with the international landscape, with all those figures thrown, and then, how do we get access to that? Then bam, it's barrier after barrier after barrier. So how do you manage expectations? How do you help in leveraging the expertise that is there, in removing those barriers is a lot of the work that we do at the national level and continentally. And I will finish with the last example, which is the African Youth Climate Hub, which is an initiative that we launched with partners at the national level, international level, so UNGO, University Mohammed VI Polytechnique, and OCP Group. And one of the dimensions is on incubation, because quite often, and more often than not, startups are SMEs. And how do you work with them in making sure that when they're amazing for climate, that they also have a great business model? And that when they have a great business model, to make sure that it's helpful for climate and sustainable development. So we've done 2 editions of that. We worked with 20 projects over 7 months for each of them through a tailored approach. We do not care about the maturity level of the project. We are able to work with projects that are just ideas, but we are also able to work with projects that are already have access to in some cases, to significant international markets. And we find ways to have a one-on-one approach with them. So this is some of what we do and how we try to help in our country, in our continent, and would be very happy to further leverage that. And I would like to also acknowledge the important SME Climate Hub that was also launched, and as well as the recent initiative that was announced by the COP29 presidency about SMEs, as well as the important work that Robert was referring to in terms of the mapping and how we can build on that mapping to have concrete impacts. Thank you very much. I hope I wasn't too long.
Thank you, Ayman. That was perfect, actually, and thank you for giving the perspective from the Mohammed VI Foundations and how you work at different levels. But I think also from what I heard is that there's only so much you can cover on your own, but you have to build on what collaborations you can promote. So let me now turn to Vikas Agrawal from ACCA. Maybe an interesting perspective from financial advisors to SMEs, especially in emerging markets, from the accountants' perspective, from your association. So, how you as accountants assist SMEs with technical or financial matters in addressing barriers for implementing and financing SME climate mitigation and adaptation actions? What, from your perspective, again, what are the biggest challenges for SMEs in climate action? So over to you, Vikas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, look, it's a pleasure to be here. And again, we're also a big fan of the PCCB. We participated last year at COP with PCCB, and it's always a pleasure to be back. You might be wondering why I'm talking about accountants. Now, just a bit about ACCA. We have over 750,000 members and students around the world across 181 countries. So we're a really global organization. We train people to exactly the same standards wherever you're in the US, China, Serbia, it doesn't really matter. You're learning the same stuff. And the reason that's important is because this sort of business advice, we need it to be equitable around the world. Now, our accountants, our professionals, they work in big businesses, they work in governments, charities, they work at the UN. But actually, most of them, a lot of the work they do is supporting SMEs. Yes, they're doing their bookkeeping, they're doing their company reports, but more often than not, they're actually their business advisors. And so what we're doing as an organization is helping those accountants, those professionals, to be the best business advisors they can be. And we're doing that in a number of ways. Through our professionals, through our members, we're teaching them, we're training them, we're investing in their skills to make sure that they understand what climate finance is, what green skills they need to help their clients grow. Now, fundamentally, the SME, their business is important to the SMP, the small and medium practice. If their client suffers, then they suffer. So it's really about ensuring that they can continue to survive. So we're looking at pushing skills onto these professionals such that they can help their clients, their SMEs. In terms of how we're engaging with SMEs directly, we work with a number of associations around the world, and this is to provide them with toolkits, right? Not reports, not long reports where they have to sit and read for 80 pages. This is about something that they can download and copy and paste and stick it into their business planning. We have reporting standards, and that might not sound particularly interesting, but business reporting is the language that banks need, that investors need, in order to understand what you're doing. So it's incredibly important that small businesses understand what's going on in sustainable reporting developments. So we help small businesses with these toolkits, right? Very, very tangible products that they can use, not products, but tangible resources they can use to improve their business. We work with governments and regulators around the world to ensure that they remember SMEs. Now, one of the big challenges that SMEs face is that they don't necessarily always have the largest voice, right? The big players, they're the ones that can access governments. They're the ones that can speak to a minister, they can speak to a regulator, and they can pretty much get a meeting, sometimes at the drop of a hat. SMEs don't have that power. So they depend on, aggregators, large organizations that can represent their voice. And we work with small business chambers and federations around the world to do this, to say, look, actually SMEs make up, in some economies, 90% of your economy, employment, 50% of your employment. These are the voices that matter. There's obviously a common expression, look after the pennies and the pounds will look after themselves. Well, if you look after the SMEs, the big companies can take care of themselves, really. So that's how we're supporting SMEs directly. So we have obviously investment in skills. We have those climate finance guides and those toolkits. A new element that we're really facing actually now is supporting SME resilience. Right, resilience is such a big part of climate action. We've seen over the past years now the number of climate disasters happening all over the world. The frequency is increasing. The damage is increasing. Big companies will often have redundancy plans. They can move their workers to another place. They can increase production in another plant. What does an SME do? Thinking about Valencia, think about how many businesses will have been wiped out from those floods. What are their redundancy plans? How are they planning for business continuity and crisis management? And we've just launched a piece of work. It is a report, but actually it comes with a toolkit that shows only 20% of businesses that we've surveyed actually have a continuity plan in the face of climate disasters. And it's nowhere near enough. It's nowhere near enough, right? And the reason this matters is because if something does happen, thinking about in the climate space, how is that business insured? How does it demonstrate the value that it has and it has lost to its bank, to its insurance company, to say, look, we've run out of capital, or our plant has, our machinery is damaged and it needs replacing, and we need to do it quickly, otherwise we're going to lose weeks, if not months, if potentially, their entire business to not being able to operate. That is how we support SMEs through climate change and climate action. And the last one, of course, is actually just business transformation. So, we impart this knowledge on our professionals, and they then in turn impart it on their clients. And we're talking about integrating sustainability into their day-to-day business. Bringing in the value of improving their supply chain and how they can be part of a bigger supply chain, improving their systems so they actually reap more rewards from their agricultural business. Right, sustainable finance, accessing sustainable finance to invest in that, either new technology, new ways of working, helps improve their efficiency. They become a more profitable business, and therefore they can grow. It could be something like securitizing a bit of land in Serbia. You could be a wine grower in well, as I learned, Azerbaijan, right? Helping them stay resilient and also to improve their profitability is how they will address climate action in the future.
Thank you so much, because thank you particularly for, I really like the concept of business advisors. You're really functioning as advisors and helping to help SMEs to be informed and so they can take action. And I think also a very important point about resilience, and that's something that came out very strongly in the mapping. Resilience to climate shocks, but also to resilience to change in the market also, for example. So thank you very much for those insights. Let me now turn to Sheikh Keita, the World Union for Small Medium Enterprises Ambassador in Guinea. So Sheikh, maybe can ask you to give us some perspectives from the Global South and particularly from your country for Africa. So can you give us please a snapshot what is the SME's situation in the Global South, particularly in the African context, and what do you think are the greatest or the most important capacity needs and gaps, and how, if you have any examples on how this can be better addressed?
Thank you. Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak for the people, and thank to be here because it's very important to speak about the SME today in this panel. Before I be here, I prepared something to speak about the situation in the SME in my country, in Africa in general. So, if you want to build the great nation, you have to think about the social, civil sectors. You have to think about the SME because the government don't make all inside the country. If you want to change better the life of the people, you have to give them the possibility to give job. The SME have the necessary contribution for that to expand and to change the life of the people in Berry. In Africa, the situation of SME, the climate action, small and medium enterprises SME play a key role in the global economy. But the contribution to climate action remains limited, particularly in Africa, including the Republic of Guinea, my country. SME often face several challenges that hamper the ability to respond to the climate emergency, both in terms of scale and speed. One, lack of financing. The resources of the SME often lack the funds needed to invest in green technology or to comply with environmental standards. They are more oriented toward daily survey than toward long-term climate-related planning. Two, lack of awareness and expertise. Many SME are not sufficiently informed about climate issue or the opportunity relative to climate change, adapting and relative on climate change, adaptation and migration and mitigation, please. The lack of training on good environmental practice can hamper effort. The three, limited access to sustainable technology in many regions, particularly in Africa. Access to modern, low-carbon, green technology and limited other solutions adapting to local needs. Four, insufficiency of the infrastructure on regulation SME. In this case, the government have to build a new way to make the rule, to give the chance of the SME in Africa to take growth. and go away. The capacity of the building and training is crucial to train SME manager on the climate issue, the benefits in green technology and financial opportunity. Access to the green financing, there need development financial. Sustainable project. This includes facility for adopting sustainable agriculture practice and pollution technology. Improving infrastructure, please, is essential to end consumption, substitution, solar, wind, biogas, and the second waste and natural resource management. Establishing a public policy to support SME and regulatory framework that promote ecological initiative and offer tax incentive for companies that reduce their carbon footprint would be beneficial. Listen, we have to learn this project demonstrated that with the right support, local SME can not only be resilient to climate change, but also become positive agents on change. However, such initiatives remain limited and require broader government support and wide dissemination on sustainable solar technology. In conclusion, the contribution of SME to climate action in Africa, in Guinea specific, my country, is still embryonic. But initiatives such and solar offshore show that it is possible to address this with an integrated approach that combines financing, training, and access to the sustainable technology. The challenge remains considerable, but solutions exist to improve the resilience of SME will mitigate the effect of climate change. For conclusion, we have to build the new way for the education. The climate change have to take the way from the school, small school, for the kids to know what is the climate change, what is the environment, and step by step in university, this population, these young people can be the ambassador of the climate to change the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jake, for that perspective from your country and for highlighting particularly the need for the understanding new technologies and how to apply them. I think you also mentioned the importance of conducive policy regulatory frameworks, and I think something that a very important point is the role of education in this context, and you reaffirm the importance of SMEs as mentioned before in the economies of Africa and other emerging countries or developing countries, so thank you very much for that. Let me now turn to Simon Thompson from the Global Capacity Building Coalition. Simple question. Simon, please let us know what the coalition is all about and how it relates to supporting SMEs in building their capacities.
So the Global Capacity Building Coalition is a new initiative launched by the G20 and announced at COP last year. It focuses on capacity building for the private finance sector, so banks, insurers and investors. But what has that got to do with SMEs? Let me try and sort of explain. I think we've got a very important role in this. So the role of banks when it comes to SMEs, and I know this both from the banking side, but also as somebody who ran an SME in Poland for 10 years in the 1990s, so I can think about the SME perspective too. So banks are there, yes, to provide finance. Clearly that's their role, and we know they're not doing enough in many countries. Banks also have an important role in capacity building for their SME clients and customers. And that's not a philanthropic role. It's in the bank's own commercial interest to do that, because what do banks want to do? They want to get money, they want to lend money, because that's how banks make money, by lending money. So they want to find bankable businesses and projects, and where those aren't available, it's very, they have a key role to play in together, I would say, especially with accountants as key business advisors in many markets, in bringing those bankable or helping entrepreneurs develop those bankable projects. And when we think about banks as well, picking up some of the points others made earlier, you're absolutely right. We often at COP we think about banks in terms of the capital markets, the GSS, green bonds, sustainable bonds, institutional investment, very large sums of money, $1 trillion here and a trillion there, and it soon adds up. But we often forget that the great majority of finance in developed and developing economies, including sustainable finance, is bank lending. Straightforward, simple bank lending. Things like overdrafts, working capital, and then I guess you've got asset finance, export finance, discounting, and so on. That's the finance that's relevant to SMEs. So I think my colleagues are quite right. Sort of, all the big sort of global reports about climate finance don't really unpick that area. And when we're thinking about the banks that work with SMEs, we also need to think about the diversity within that sector. So it's not just the traditional banks. You've got credit unions, microfinance, cooperative banks, saving banks, and in many markets, these are very big institutions. I mean, in the US, some credit unions many credit unions are actually bigger than many of the banks. In Poland, the state savings banks is one of the largest banks in the country. Just to give two examples. So it's in banks' interest to support SMEs, and we are increasingly seeing, and I think this is particularly in developing markets, but not only, a whole range of tools to support SMEs with that commercial interest in mind. If we support you on this journey, then you'll come to us and ask for a loan. So things like energy efficiency audits and toolkits, emissions reporting toolkits, legal and regulatory support, grants and subsidies information on moving to electric vehicles and things, changing your small fleet of vehicles and things. A lot of banks now offer free sort of carbon footprint or carbon planning tools of many kinds, and you can get, again, picking up on Vicas's point, not a big sort of report, but very often, if it's online, it'll be, go through these sort of 10 steps, and we'll produce you an action plan for you. And even if there's still more work to be done, it's a step in. It's the beginning of that education, as our colleague talked about there. But this isn't done philanthropically. It's done because it's good business for the banks. However, that said, I think the challenge, and this is one of the things that GCBC is trying to solve for, is that most bank staff don't know that these kind of tools and support exist. And they exist in some banks, in some countries, in some parts of the world. We need to get these to every bank in every country, in every part of the world, because that's how, we're talking about a global transition of almost every economic activity, every economic entity everywhere in the world. That's one issue. The second issue is many banks now, because of the economics of banking, a lot of the SME support is provided via digital channels rather than the kind of traditional face-to-face banking model, which is going to be difficult to recreate online. So, and that means that the bankers don't really understand the diversity of SMEs and the needs every SME needs. I mean, on all these sort of panels, we talk about SMEs as though SMEs are one thing. They're not. They're completely different. And we wouldn't talk about big companies like that. We seem to think it's okay with small companies. And the resources are available there, but then SMEs aren't made aware that they're there. So we need to kind of build that awareness and knowledge of bank staff. But I think the other thing where banks can help is banks should be, and some are in some cases, or banking associations, bodies like mine that bring together the finance sector, need to work more with the business associations, as our colleague from Morocco talked about, to help with those capacity building initiatives, so that the banks are supporting the SME, chambers of commerce and similar bodies. We need to be supporting the key advisors, the accountants, as I said, the education sector sort of more broadly too, so that we're building that whole ecosystem of capacity building that allows SMEs and their advisors to bring bankable projects to banks, and banks can then make money by lending money to the SMEs who need them.
Thank you so much, Simon. For one wouldn't think that necessarily about training the banks for helping the SMEs, because as you said, but it's an important business case. So thank you for that perspective and how the role of the financial sector in this ecosystem to help build the capacities of SMEs. Now I will turn to Fernando Castellanos. He is with the Global Compact, and the Global Compact, as many of you know, has been around for some time now. And but maybe just ask Fernando, what does or can the Global Compact do to support the capacity building needs of SMEs, bearing in mind its wide and global reach because you work with networks. And based on the experience from the Global Compact, what are the biggest challenges and priorities in terms of support required to build the capacity of SMEs? So Fernando, over to you.
Thanks, Alejandro, and thanks for the invitation to join this event. Yes, so for those of you who do not know, the Global Compact is an initiative launched 24 years ago, and we focus on mobilizing companies around 10 principles on human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption. And in our strategy, we focus on enabling environments and accountable companies. So we ask companies, we sort of say mobilizing, we're not a lobbying organization, but we mobilize. We're sort of the UN lobby towards companies. We push companies to follow and align with these principles that we have. But at the same time, we create or we aim at providing capacity building tools in this term of enabling environments. And so we have right now about 22,000 we call them participants, companies that are part of the Global Compact. And we work, as Alejandro rightly mentioned, we work through country networks that are both in developed and developing countries. And we currently have about 70 country networks. We've been working on establishing new country networks, reaching for more companies to join the compact and have access to our tools. About 60% of our participants are SMEs, and we, once a company joins the Global Compact, they have access to all of our tools. We mainly work on 3 capacity building work streams, we call it. We have an online platform, we call it the Global Compact Academy, which are a range of online tools and webinars, both live and on demand, that we provide to companies. In terms of environmental topics and climate change, we've been working a lot focused on having greenhouse gas inventories, having companies set their science-based targets, recognizing that a lot of issues that we hear, especially from the large multinationals that have the means to engage in climate action, say, well, in order for me to address my scope 3 emissions, I have to address those emissions in my supply chains, and many of these are SMEs around the world. So we focus a lot, or we've been focusing a lot on this aspect. And focusing on how companies can decarbonize while having a profit. We know if they don't have a profit, the company can disappear, and it's both social and economic impacts in the country. To this end, we also have an accelerator, which is like 6 to 8 month capacity building course, which is delivered through our networks. So from the Global Compact office, the headquarters based in New York, we develop the basics, and then this is sent to our networks who translate it into the local language, adapt it to the local or the national context, and then deliver the training itself. And we also have peer learning groups. We want companies to learn from each other, and these are also implemented by our networks. A lot of the tools that we deliver, we rely on our networks to translate it into their local language. We hear a lot from companies, both big and small, the SMEs in particular, that it is not just the 6 UN official languages. When we go to specific countries, especially in Asia, they say, well, the CEO, the CSO, the upper management, they speak English, or they speak Chinese, Mandarin, But the ones doing the work day to day, they either don't speak English or they speak very little English. So our networks support in translating the tools and delivering this training in their local language. Additionally, we have a specific program which is across the board on our principles, but aims at integrating the aspect of our 10 principles, including environment, in schools, in graduate schools specifically, in MBA programs, to sort of get the future entrepreneurs, employees, heads of industry, to already have embedded in their minds this aspect of having to address climate change and the SDGs as well. So what we hear from companies themselves is that they need more tools, more education, and they need it in their language, adapted to their context, and that they want to be also engaged in the conversation, both nationally and internationally, and to showcase what they are doing and show their challenges, to also provide that feedback to policymakers for them to be able to sort of do good, but also have a profit and address climate change.
Thank you very much, Fernando. So I think from all your presentations, I think there's a lot happening in support of SMEs, and that's very encouraging. Maybe before, I would like to give the floor to our audience if there are any questions or comments before a final quick reflection from our panelists. If anyone has a question or comment, please just raise your hand and we'll pass a microphone to you. Okay, I think that was very informative. I hope it has been useful for everyone. But maybe just to close, and we have very little time, but maybe in 30 seconds, and thinking of all the richness of initiatives out there, what you're doing, but there still needs persisting. So what do you think from the UNFCCC process or for the PCCB, how can this process or the work of the PCCB could be of use to either amplify these initiatives, or do you see any potential there? Maybe let's start the other way around with Fernando, and then in 30 seconds, please.
In 30, I think the PCCB, it's a critical platform to bring different actors together and sort of create a collaborative environment for all of us to sort of coordinate and bring positive impact on the ground.
Thank you, Fernando. Simon.
So I think you and your colleagues have very wisely chosen the theme for 2025 of financing or capacity building to finance NDCs and national adaptation plans. I think that has the potential to bring together a lot of different capacity building sort of bodies under that banner. In terms of today's topic, it's critical that SMEs have a role in NDCs and national adaptation plans, and very often they're not included in those discussions. So if the PCCB can work on that, I think that would be very helpful.
Thank you, Simon. I think that's very useful, and thanks for the suggestion. Vikas, please.
Yeah, look, I think the work program throughout the year is great. I've learned a lot actually from other sectors, from other walks of life. That's really important. I really agree with Fernando's point about the element of language and bringing it to people. I think we can expect SMEs to just find the stuff that we do and learn it without any sort of friction or challenge whatsoever. Actually, we have to do a lot more, and I think PCCB is doing this really well, to take it and put it in front of the SME and make it as easy for them to adopt as possible, because otherwise it's just another burden for them. So it's about removing the friction, removing the sort of oiling the wheels to help SMEs get better without too much effort from them.
No, thank you, Vikas. Sheikh, your thoughts?
I think all initiatives demand adhesion, popular adhesion, the comprehension. I hope the next COP 2030, we receive many students to the panel because we prepare tomorrow. This tomorrow can be the occasion of the young people to build the new nation. This nation for the climate change and everything. We have to take the time to invite sometime the university and this conference because it's very important to include the young people. The young people is our avenue. This is tomorrow. Tomorrow is done. It's now. We have to be ready for that. And let me tell you, we have only one world. We don't have two worlds. And when you make the projection today in the world, we have two worlds. The world who we have finance, every facilities. We have the second world who have the poverty. We have every difficulty, and we don't have finance. We have to take time to reflection, to make the reflection, to save, think in mind, to speak together, to say, hey, what is your problem? This is my recommendation. This is my solution. We have to build a new way and a new world together to make a better world. So thank you for everybody here.
Thank you, Sheikh. Thank you for those inspiring words. And also I think you highlighted the importance of engaging young people because there's a lot of youth entrepreneurs that are generating the new SMEs of the future. So how to support them and help them build their capacities together with working with the education and formal education system. And as you mentioned, engage universities. So thank you very much. Robert, your quick reflection.
I'll try to be quick. No, I just would like to say, I think what others, and I'm glad to hear that other colleagues here, not yet another one, and we don't need this, rather saying there is a role to play for the PCCB, the UN, in bringing together the different pieces, what we've heard here, at the international, regional, and national level, working, and that's the strength of the UN system, I think, with partners, bringing together relevant government actors, private sector associations, or at the national level, maybe players like the foundation in Morocco, and bring that together, coordinate partnership, consortia building. I think that's where the added value here could be. And of course, we are not reinventing the wheel here. And you hear excellent initiatives here, what others are doing. Very pleased to hear that. So I think there's more work to be done and to coordinate and to see about partnerships. And yeah, I'll leave it at that and hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Robert. And last but definitely not least, Ayman.
Thank you very much. Very much aligned with what was said previously. And as the foundation, we're very happy to work at the national level, at the regional level, and globally, inshallah. So my one key word will be context. And what I mean to say by context is connecting to two of the threads I heard before. One of the threads being language. I think is very important, language. In language as international language, but also in how you frame the elements is very important. And the second point, and that'll be my last contribution to this amazing panel, would be context in terms of what you were saying earlier, so in terms of the fact that SMEs are not a monolith, that they are very different from one another. And we could, at minima, for example, separate them between SMEs whose very business model depends on climate solution and climate action, and then SMEs that are a bit different. And how you work with those different categories is very different and needs different capacity building needs that need to be addressed in a context-specific manner. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ayman, and points very well taken, and these are very useful insights also for the work. Yeah, please.
All right, thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Naftali, I'm from Nigeria, and I'm building a consultancy firm, but it's still in its early stage. And then I've interacted with a few companies within the Global South, about building this arm of sustainability, like in the entire value chain. But then I'm glad that this is about SMEs, and most of them do not have the capacity to either hire people who can help look through their business model and see if this is environmentally friendly. And then we're also talking about Article 6. Of course, if this comes to reality, it means most business will want to be able to build this other arm that can help them perhaps generate profit from the carbon credit schemes. Now, this is going to pressure maybe funders or other people who are willing to sponsor small businesses into making sure that they are compliant, if I may use that word. So what do we think will be the place of SMEs who cannot even afford maybe consultants or do not have the necessary resources to make sure that their businesses are environmentally friendly? Yeah.
Thank you, and a very good question, very practical question from someone starting a venture. So I don't know, we have limited time, but who would like to respond?
There is a lot of information on the internet for free. Of course, you need to know where to find it. But I think this is actually a challenge for us. So we produce this information for anyone to use. It's open access. It's out there on the internet. Download it and use it. But we depend on multipliers to get that information out there. You don't have to pay for very specific information all the time. It's about finding the information on there. So I would always recommend going to your chambers of commerce, to your federations of small business, to the PCCB, to the new GCBC, and lots of acronyms there, I know, because everything that, well, perhaps 90% of what you need, or at least where to start, is there. But like I said, the challenges for us is getting it out to businesses. Right? We can't speak to every business around the world. We've got to use multipliers. Our professionals are multipliers. They have 10 clients each, for argument's sake. So if they can help them 10 of their clients and our other professionals can help 10 of their clients, then actually you end up addressing people quite quickly with this. But we can speak afterwards, but there's certainly a lot of stuff that we can provide.
Thank you for your question. Welcome to our club, because I am ambassador of the WUSME. WUSME is the World Union for Small and Middle Enterprise. It's possible to have many information about SME, to scale SME in Africa, what we can do together to help you, your sectors, to make it grow in your country. We are here for that, and we are World Union. We work for the SME to have advising. You enter in the club, and you have every possibility, because we have entrepreneurs who have the experience and the expertise to give you. And the world is a change. And the new deal in the world is our capability to make the common intelligence, the collective intelligence. I'm here. I want to know you. I have to know you. You know me, and you give me your experience. You give me the information about your company. It's possible to bring you my ideas, my knowledge, and my capability, my result is done. We are here to build a new way for the new nation and the new world. Okay, everything is open. Let's go.
Thank you very much. I think you have very good responses and new resources to tap into. But Ayman, please.
Briefly, and thank you for your question. I would like to first say that the call for application for the third edition is open of the African Youth Climate Hub is open until the 25th of November. So if you're interested yourself as somebody that is creating value for the continent and globally, please consider applying to the African Youth Climate Hub. 5 days left. The second point I wanted to raise is it's important to be transparent. I've been doing or have been benefiting from capacity building activities linked to Article 6 since at least 2016. And at some point, that's why I was referring to managing expectations, because it's important to also have a bit of a reality check. Because if you work with stakeholders and their expectations are there and they're not met, then when you want to continue engaging with them, then it's going to be even more difficult when you work with your clients, when you work with your partners, etc. It's all about, to a certain extent, bringing expertise, but also aiming for how does it go? Aiming for the moon, you end up with the stars. I think it's the other way around. It was something like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ayman. Robert, the last word.
Very quick one, since more people had. We looked into that. I mentioned this study, Initiative BMZ. I think and goes in the same direction what Ayman said. If you look at Article 6, you will need to work SMEs with aggregators, others organizations, be it civil society, NGO, or expert organization, and that's where climate finance from bilaterals, international organizations, they pay for that, not the SMEs. But I think that's a more detailed bilateral, but that would be my very practical advice. Thanks.
Thank you, Robert. We went a bit over time, but very interesting discussions and very good answers to the questions. Thank you very much again, and please do remain in touch. Thank you very much. Thank you, my friend. So we meet at